Hello, and welcome to Friday's episode of the Literary Lutheran Reads the Book of Concord. In today's episode, we will start Article 27 of the Augsburg Confession, Monastic Vows. This article has in view Martin Luther's experience in the monastery, along with what other former monks had to say about life in the cloister. The idea that a person should hide himself behind the walls of a monastery and perform spiritual works to make himself more worthy of God's favor has no biblical justification at all. During the Middle Ages, many common people believed that only priests, monks, or nuns were truly performing spiritual work. But such a view contradicts God's word, which teaches how all life is an opportunity to serve God, giving Him glory by serving our neighbor. Even today, it is assumed that activities at church are somehow of greater value than the common everyday duties life requires of us. This article extols such biblical duties as being a faithful husband, wife, son, or daughter, and takes great care to reject monasticism and explain how harmful and dangerous it is for those who are entrapped in it. Forcing chastity on those who have not been given this gift is particularly harmful, since many are led to believe they merit God's grace by means of their sacrifice, not the sacrifice of Christ. It will be easier to understand what we teach about monastic vows by considering the state of the monasteries and how many things were done every day contrary to canon law. In Augustine's time, they were free associations. Later, when discipline was corrupted, vows were added for the purpose of restoring discipline, as in a carefully planned prison. Gradually, many other regulations were added besides vows. These binding rules were laid upon many before the lawful age contrary to canon law. Many entered monastic life through ignorance. They were not able to judge their own strength, though they were old enough. They were trapped and compelled to remain, even though some could have been freed by the kind of provision of canon law. This was more the case in convents of women than of monks, although more consideration should have been shown the weaker sex, 1 Peter 3:7. This rigor displeased many good people before this time, who saw that young men and women were thrown into convents for a living. They saw what unfortunate results came of this procedure, how it created scandals, and what snares were cast upon consciences. They were sad that the authority of canon law in so great a matter was utterly set aside and despised. In addition to all these evil things, a view of vows was added that displeased even the more considerate monks. They taught that monastic vows were equal to baptism. They taught that a monastic life merited forgiveness of sins and justification before God. Yes, they even added that the monastic life not only merited righteousness before God, but even greater merit, since it was said that the monastic life not only kept God's basic law, but also the so-called evangelical counsels. So they made people believe that the profession of monasticism was far better than baptism, and that the monastic life was more meritorious than that of rulers, pastors, and others who serve in their calling according to God's commands without any man-made services. None of these things can be denied. This is all found in their own books about monasticism. How did this all come about in monasteries? At one time, there were schools of theology and other branches of learning producing pastors and bishops for the benefit of the church. Now it is another thing. It is needless to go over what everyone knows. Before they came together for the sake of learning. Now they claim that monasticism is a lifestyle instituted to merit grace and righteousness. They even preach that it is a state of perfection. They put monasticism far above all other kinds of life ordained by God. We have mentioned all these things without hateful exaggeration so that our teacher's doctrine on monasticism may be better understood. First, concerning monks who marry, our teachers say that it is lawful for anyone who is not suited for the single life to enter into marriage. Monastic vows cannot destroy what God has commanded and ordained. God's commandment is this: because of the temptation to sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife. 1 Corinthians 7:2. It is not just a command given by God. God has created and ordained marriage for those who are not given an exception to natural order by God's special work. This is what is taught according to the text in Genesis 2:18. It is not good that the man shall be alone. Therefore, those who obey this command and ordinance of God do not sin. What objection can be raised to this? Let people praise the obligation of a monastic vow as much as they want, but they will never be able to destroy God's commandment by means of a monastic vow. Canon law teaches that superiors can make exceptions to monastic vows. How much less are such monastic vows in force that are contrary to God's commandments? If in fact an obligation to a monastic vow could never be changed for any reason, the Roman popes could never have granted exceptions to the vows, for it is not lawful for someone to make an exception to what is truly from God. The Roman pontiffs have very wisely judged that mercy is to be observed in these monastic obligations. This is why we read that many times they have made special arrangements and exceptions with monastic vows. The case of King of Aragon, who was called back from the monastery, is well known, and there are also examples in our own times. This has been the Literary Lutheran Reads the Book of Concord, and I wish you a blessed day.